Okay. Hi, everybody. It's St. Timothy's here. Laura and I are back, ready to answer your questions. So we'll take turns at these and argue a little bit about who's right and who isn't. First question, is it bad to try vaping once? Laura, what do you think?
I think it definitely is, because especially if we're vaping using nicotine products, because that nicotine is going to be increasing our dopamine, which instantly causes cravings. And also too, it can be dangerous because we don't really know what's in vaping, because it hasn't been around long. So we don't really know the long-term effects of it. What do you think?
Well, what you said is exactly true. The other thing is that usually when you do something once, there's not a huge result from it, which immediately makes you think, well, it's not that bad. I'm going to do it again. And then you can really quickly get caught up in a cycle of doing it. And 3 or 4 times of nicotine ingestion, and you're starting to develop a dependency on it. So it's better to just leave it alone.
Totally. Okay, so the second question is, taking antidepressants prescribed a bad thing?
No, it isn't. If your doctor has prescribed you antidepressants, it's probably a good idea. It's important to understand that antidepressants don't magically solve a depression problem. What they help to do is balance your brain chemistry better, which is what the problem is with depression, and gives you a better chance to start to do the work that you need to do to get yourself feeling better. And then, is ADHD medication used properly a form of substance abuse? You can answer that one.
No, it's definitely not. ADHD medication helps level the brain chemicals and helps our prefrontal cortex. So as long as we are using them that are properly prescribed by a doctor, it's not a form of substance abuse. As soon as people start to misuse their original prescription, then that can become an abuse problem.
That's true. So the next one, and I think we might not have been really clear when we were talking about this, because the question says, if the government was so fixated on making vapes accessible to youth, was there no other source of profit to them besides vapes? This seems weird that the government would do this. Absolutely right. It would be weird if they did that, but they didn't do that. Why would they do this? To ruin the lives of teens? I was talking about that, and I guess I wasn't really clear. It wasn't the government that initiated vape technology. It was tobacco companies, and they were doing it to try and get adolescents back into using nicotine. So it wasn't the government, and the government really doesn't make much kind of tax profit from it anyway. So Laura, is there a possible solution to widespread vaping in youth?
Totally. I think that creating an awareness and understanding what nicotine does, especially to our young people, is super important. Because I think once we know and learn about something, then we have that piece to know exactly what it's doing to us.
Yeah, and that actually worked really well with cigarette smoking, because every year for the last 20 years, there's been fewer and fewer teens starting to use cigarettes.
Was the government? Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, was the government aware of the risks that came with vaping being popular among youth?
No, they weren't. They weren't prepared for it at all, and adolescent teenage vaping just kind of took off like a rocket ship, and so they were behind the curve for 2 or 3 years trying to recreate legislation to help minimize it. Like, you used to be able to walk into 7-Eleven and there were vapes all over the place, and they finally got that changed. So they're still working on some of the stuff that they need to do. And like you said before, the biggest piece is an education piece.
Okay, I love this next question. If my parents use marijuana for depression, are they going to be addicted. Is it okay for them to use marijuana for depression and anxiety? I'm going to leave this to the expert to answer.
So it's not uncommon for people to think that marijuana use helps with depression, because it does briefly make us feel a little bit different. But one of the fundamental problems with it is that it, at the same time as it's making us feel like the depression is a little bit better in the moment, it's making the underlying depression worse, because it's altering our brain chemistry and reducing our brain's ability to respond to stress and issues and stuff like that. And they're not necessarily going to get addicted to it, but it's not really going to be helpful to them. And then the next question is, what CBD oil, and can a person get addicted to it? So THC, which is the cannabinoid in marijuana that gets us high, tends to make depression and anxiety worse. CBD is cannabidiol, which is another cannabinoid that's in marijuana and cannabis that actually does have some medicinal value to it. And some of the early research on that is indicating that it can be helpful for depression and anxiety.
And so when people get a product or something, there cannot be a high amount of THC and a high amount of CBD in the same compound, right? It either has to be one or the other. And does CBD get us high? No, it doesn't.
No, it's not psychoactive. So because it's not psychoactive, you don't get addicted to it. And marijuana plants, like you said, can't produce high levels of both. One of the advantages of legalized marijuana is that now you can go into a cannabis store and specifically ask for something that has 0 THC or really low THC and high CBD. So there can be some medicinal value to it. And then the last question, when considering smoking, vaping, or marijuana, which of the three is less harmful or less addictive?
Stay away from all of them. They all have harmful effects to them, but definitely I find the THC piece in marijuana and what it does to especially the teenage brain, I feel like it's a lot more harmful, definitely long term. What are your thoughts, Rand?
Well, nicotine is more addictive than heroin. The other thing that's more addictive than heroin is cannabis use, daily cannabis use by an adolescent. The level of addiction that's created by regular cannabis use with a teenager has huge capacity to be really highly addictive. And so, like you said off the start, just instead of worrying about those stuff, like go ride your bike or skateboard or draw a picture.
Shoot some basketball hoops.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, guys. If you have more questions, let us know. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, you bet. See you.
Yeah, bye.